Hello, my name is Roy Poyan. I'm the Director of Families Impacted by Opioids, and I want to thank you for joining us for this next episode of Fentanyl, the Families in Harm's Way. What we're going to be doing is taking a look at how this whole situation that we find ourselves in, life journey, can be supported by having a peer-to-peer coach connected to your loved one who's misusing substances and is now trying to gain successful recovery, abstinence, and sobriety. So what the peer-to-peer program, if you're fortunate enough in your part of the country to have this available, it is very, very important to connect with when they start to either be discharged from IOP or in the aftercare program, if they're currently enrolled in that. What peer-to-peer does is it takes a person who has life experience with addictions and marries them up with your loved one. So it's not so much a support element, although it is that, but it's more kind of a coach of how to navigate some of the things like they'll help them in understanding, like job search, transportation, sober living facilities, getting a new ID, getting a new driver's license. There's all kinds of re-entry back into the community, especially if they just are released from incarceration. But it's also true as they come out of a 16-week IOP. This is a new life. They have to reestablish themselves. They need to get away from the environment that they were in. So now all of a sudden they have to choose other types of more healthy places. That peer-to-peer person understands that changing of lifestyles and how valuable it is, and can assist them in understanding some of the great easier pathways and some of the pitfalls. So peer-to-peer services is what we're going to talk about at the family table today. Let's all move on over there and see what this is all about. Then you can decide for yourself how this might fit into what it is you and your family would like to see. Recording, so you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you for joining us again here at the family table. We want to take time to continue our discussion on this program. And hopefully I'm speaking to an audience that has this as an asset in your community. If you don't, you may want to Google it, find out about it, and ask your public health and your local mental health department what they're doing to take steps in order to start a program such as peer support services. In the state of Ohio, Ohio actually reimburses that participation of a coach to kind of walk in the journey with your loved one while they're either in a treatment center or afterwards while they're going through recovery. This is a very valuable service. What we have is a person who's experienced this journey themselves. The requirements for peer-to-peer, for them to actually participate and be licensed to do so, is that they take a certain number of hours, typically around 40 hours of credentialed education, and also a certain number of hours of interface personal time under supervision playing this role. And what we wanted to do was to make sure that this wasn't just somebody who had been through the experience, but understood how to be a life coach, a coach of sort, what to do, what to say, what to do, when to do it, how to help guide them, how to motivate them towards certain positive ways of living their life. And that's what this is about. We have to first, when we look at peer-to-peer services, take a look at the person that they're doing this for. This person's in a lot of trouble. They've been broken, and they're not going to have to stay that way. And obviously, if they're receiving peer-to-peer services, they've kind of stated up front and have demonstrated that they are willing to take steps now in their life. That doesn't mean all of their steps are going to be sure-footed on sure ground. They may be tiptoeing around certain things or stepping lightly because they don't have the confidence, they don't have the strength, they don't have the understanding. They're being attacked on a cognitive level. they could be being attacked from a social and economic level. I say attacked because that's the way they feel. We, of course, would see it differently. Somebody might sit there and say, oh, Bob, that's just life, and kind of get over it mentality, or get past it, or work your way around it. It's not that simple. It's just not that simple. And for us to take that position with them is short of being cruel. It certainly is insensitive, and it's not going to help. You're not going to motivate them by using that kind of approach. A peer-to-peer comes alongside and in a very empathetic way walks with them. I understand what you're experiencing. I've experienced something similar to this. I've been on this journey. Let me show you a little bit about what steps right now in terms of getting your driver's license are going to be helpful for you. Now, we sit there and we think, oh, get your driver's license. Go down, make the application, fill out, you might have to take the test, understand that there's certain penalties and restrictions because of what you did before, and that's why you're having to reinitiate your driver's license today, and don't take it so personally. No. Once again, it's not that simple. And we need to be understanding that them having a peer-to-peer coach is extremely beneficial. And guess what? As the family members and the parents, the peer-to-peer coach probably won't even talk to you. They're not there for you. They're there for this person. In fact, if they start to have a relationship with you and them, then you might get into the triangulation relationships and all the disparities and destructive behavior that comes with that. You don't need that. You need this person who's helping your loved one help your loved one and stay out of it, okay? They know what they're doing, and more than likely, you won't fully understand why they're doing it or the circumstances that they're aware of that are impeding or allowing the person to move forward in. So there is a growing interest in having peer-to-peer coaches for the family members, which I applaud. I think that that would be fabulous when we get to that level of understanding that the family is a part of the chronicness of this brain disease. There's a continuity that stretches out. The family is now involved in this addiction, and the family system is now going to live as a family system with substance use disorders as a part of it, as a chronic disease, in the same way that they would do if it was asthma, diabetes, CHF, COPD, hypertension. All of these are lifelong diseases. They don't go away. The family and the person just learns how to manage them and live around them appropriately. And usually we're able to find very gratifying lifestyles, even with these chronic diseases involved in members of our family. The likelihood of you being able to do that with substance use disorders is very, very great, okay? It's very, very likely that your family will be able to find a way to mold in a maladaption way of the system moving itself around, be able to coexist and live very, very healthy lives even with this chronic disease present. A peer-to-peer coach helps you to kind of get through that more tentative time frame of, if we were to say, and it's not necessarily always this case, but after discharge, and their acute care settings are always a finite number, meaning they always have an endpoint. They're episodic, they're not chronic, which means they give it back or they give it over to what would be the next level of care. In many cases, our society does not develop a path and service and structure, a highway that's paved for this. We could, but we're not. For whatever reason, we're not, it's not there. And the fact that it's not there is our reality. So what we're doing is we're suggesting that the family members, if they choose to be involved in this person's life, can be that, but that they have to get educated, which is why you're looking at all of these presentations, these episodes of fentanyl and families in harm's way, and taking the study guide and the workbook and making it yours. These practiced exercises in 3D coping skills, determining a solution, developing a decision, and designing a plan of action, that's your highway. Peer-to-peer is another asset that helps you in the beginning, which is really jagged and bumpy and rough for the first 24 to 48 months of this person's life after they finish the recovery program or the IOP, or after they finish their aftercare. These individuals need support. And peer-to-peer is professionally, meaning a lot of studies have been done to design what a peer-to-peer coach does and has available in their toolbox to assist this person. So when we start to look at the study guide, we can then take a look at, so what does peer-to-peer involve? And that way, you're not asking yourself questions that could be answered by you by taking these materials and understanding them. Your concern is your health and the health of your family members, as well as the person that's misusing substances. It's not just the person that's using substances. By having a peer-to-peer coach, this will allow you some bandwidth, some space to be able to focus on your family members, the other members and friends, and your social life and your self-care. And that's one of the values, if we were to think, personally, what's the advantage to me that Jerry has a peer-to-peer coach? That certainly is one of them. And it's a very important aspect. We shouldn't be overlooking the value of that and what it provides to us. It also provides something that's emotional. It provides us hope. And hope is spiritual as well as it is kind of like physical and material ways in our lives. So we have hope when others who know this person's journey gets involved in their life. It's kind of like oh, thank goodness. I'm really glad that this person is helping out. Now, to what degree they're going to be helpful, that's really not ours to determine. You're just going to have to kind of accept what transpires as being transpires. If our loved one fails or has a hiccup or relapses, that's not that's not the fault of the peer-to-peer coach. I laugh because I think so many of us look at ourselves with the same kind of judgment. He had a hiccup, or he went back to using, and then he got right back into recovery. That's the journey. We've described that in previous episodes, and we know that to be true. Okay, we know scientifically that to be true, as well as through everybody's life experience. So for us to go searching the tundra and say, it's that person's fault, it's that person's fault, this didn't happen, that wouldn't have happened, you're wasting your time in the sense that you need to do that. You don't need to do that. And when success is achieved, it's also a combination of a lot of things coming together. Rarely is there one element in addictions and substance use disorder that we can sit there and say, there's the silver bullet, and if we just do that, everything's going to be better. The treatment centers, we'll send them to the treatment center, and they'll be better. No, they won't, okay? They'll be on a journey. And that's important for the family to understand, because that is a part of your hope journey, your journey that things will get better, because it's very likely that they will. So you might as well start thinking that way, because if you have a fatalistic attitude that nothing's ever going to get better, well then, even when it gets better, you're probably not going to see it, because you're still thinking, this can't be true, it's going to change, it's going to go back to being bad again. Don't do that to yourself. When you've got a peer-to-peer coach, see this as being hope, see this as being health, see this as being a part of your home improving and getting better, and welcome this person. Don't counter the peer-to-peer coach's input. In other words, it's very likely that the one that's misusing substances at points will sit there and say, I don't think that they're really giving me good advice. And they're kind of looking at, can I turn this into a triangulation where you'll kind of like bond with me and we'll both be against the peer-to-peer coach? Don't do that, okay? That's going to be counterproductive, and you're not going to get the value of what this person has to offer you. So when we start to look at those types of things, we'll look at our workbook. It may be that you'll want to journal exactly what is going on with the peer-to-peer coach in terms of what they're saying, okay? The peer-to-peer coach is not going to come to you and say, hey, tell me what he's been telling you about me being with him. Okay, that's likely not going to happen, nor do I believe that's part of their protocol and how they should be doing what they do. But when it comes to you, you need to know that there are things you should not be doing. You should not be sitting there saying, so tell me, with your peer-to-peer coach, what all are you doing all the time? What is he doing for you? Don't do that. That's their relationship, and that's their growth. When they want you to know what's going on between them and their peer-to-peer coach, they will tell you. So that's what we're pointing out here in the workbook. If you have issues that arise to this, then use your 3D coping skills on exactly how to address the issues. I want to thank you very much. Be supportive of those who support you. If you have peer-to-peer coach, and you can find out through any Medicaid resource for your state, you could talk to, typically your treatment centers are aware. You could Google, just type in the word peer-to-peer and say your state name or your county name and get the phone number and call them ahead of time and tell them, my loved one is currently using, we're hopeful that we can get them into treatment, but I need to know more about your services. Peer-to-peer is part of your community mapping project, okay? It's part of your Get Connected in Advance project. And so by the time we're talking about this, if you've taken these seminars in sequence, and you don't have to, but if you did, then you would already have done those things and you would know exactly who I'm talking about. And hopefully, in the Getting Connected in Advance, you would have already connected with them and found out what their criteria is and how you as a family would work in tandem in supporting or staying out of the peer-to-peer activity with your loved one. I want to thank you for taking the time to review peer-to-peer services. They are a valuable entity. And by the way, there are other alike valuable entities in your community. Ask what they are from the people that will likely know, and record them and then get in touch with them in advance. Thank you very much. Hello, I want to thank you for continuing to view our episode. And we're now going to work into the area of the 3Ds. This is an important characteristic for the family to develop skills in. And we'll start by taking the time to look at an issue and then determine the issues based on the area of determining a solution, developing a decision, and designing a plan of action. By using your Module 3 workbook and going to a specific issue, you'll be able to find that the first step in that 3D skill set is the FTR, the Family Transformational Model. And the Family Transformational Model is a set-up way, each time the same way, that we will take 5 categories to look at in determining a solution. And each category is going to have 3 questions. So let's get started. The first is to define the issue. Naturally, we'll want to know what the issue is. The word issue is really problem, but we're saying the word issue is, the reason we're saying the word issue is it's just a little bit easier to digest, because it's not always a problem. Sometimes it's just something that's happening and we need to determine a solution to it. The next question is, how does the issue impact the family? We need to know that. We need to know we have an issue, that's fine. The issues can exist, but if it's impacting the family, in what way is it impacting the family? And then what steps can the family take to prepare and then respond to the issue? That's very important for us to know. The fact is that this issue exists and it's impacting the family. We tend to believe maybe there was something we could have done to kind of get ready for it. And if there was, then we would want to have taken those steps, which is what all these episodes are about. And then who can help assist us and the family in our response? So we want to start to ask ourselves, we know that there's an issue, we know that it's impacting the family, and there are things that we could do to prepare for this, but we're probably going to need a resource, information, another person outside of our family, or maybe one of our family members specifically can use their functionality and contribute. So we want to identify that. And then what should the family expect as their outcome? And kind of a start with the end in mind thought, where we're saying, if we're going to do something, it's going to result in something. So is that result desirable? Is that really what we want? Because if we're going to create a solution, then we want the solution's outcome to be what we expect it would be. So in each of these categories that I just described, 1 through 5, there are 3 questions, and we're going to ask ourselves each of these. Let's go back into the first category, define the issue. Clearly state what happened or what will happen. We want to know very clearly what happened or what's likely to happen. And then write that down. Identify who's involved or who should be involved. And then what would you like to have happen or like to see happen? The third question in every category is going to be used. You'll see how in just a minute. But just remember, the third question in every category, so this question right here, the way you answer it, will be reused. Now the next question is, how is the issue impacting the family? Who in the family exactly is impacted? In what way are they impacted? And then the third question is, what is needed to move forward? And then the third category is, what steps can the family take to prepare and then respond to the issue? The 3 questions again. What needs to be done? And then prioritize that list. Who needs to be involved? And then what will it look like, the third question, what will it look like when completed? Then the 4th category is, who can help and assist the family in their response? The 3 questions are, how to search and organize this organization to help you. In other words, it's not enough that you know you're going to go and introduce yourselves to a treatment center in your community. You want to start to determine, how do I look for them and organize my way of seeking help, because it might not just be that group alone. You may also need other services to kind of start to create a who can assist us. And it may be many different types of people. What to ask from them, and then what to expect. Remember the third question, what to expect. And then the 5th category is, what should the family expect as their outcome? Well, that has to do a lot with timing. And if it takes a certain amount of time, let's be realistic of what that is. That has something to do with the expense of the involvement, of getting involved in this issue. And then the third question being, required changes, our changes as family members, for this response to successfully take place. Now, let's state what our solution is. Hey, this is the great news. You've already developed your solution. By answering each of these 3 questions, the third question in every category, you'll pull forward now into your statement. So your first sentence of your statement is the third answer in the first category. What would you like to have happen or like to see happen? Well, that becomes your first sentence. So what your first sentence for your solution statement is, what we would like to see happen is, and you just pull your answer from there to here. Do the same thing with the second category. How does the issue impact the family? Using the third question's answer, what is needed for the family to move forward? So now your second sentence is, what's needed to move forward is, and now you're accumulating these answers from these categories, the third question, and it's actually becoming your first sentence, your second sentence, your third sentence, your fourth sentence, and your fifth sentence in your solution statement. So your solution statement is going to sound something like, what we would like to see happen is, and what's needed to move forward will be, and then the third question from the third category, what it will look like when completed will be, and then what we expect will be, and then what's required for us to have a successful response is. Now those are your 5 sentences. You've just constructed your solution. And this is how you go back using a model for creating a solution. For any issue in life you have to face, you can use this as a way of approaching it. Now let's go to the other area, which is the second coping skill, making a decision. Let's make a value-based decision. Let's make a decision each time that kind of balances with what we value most. So first we want to determine what are our values. Well, the best way to do that is to write down on a piece of paper, what types of things do you as an individual value most? And each member of your family can do this in a kind of a group exercise. And then once you've done that, I value love, I value honesty, I value relationships and sharing. These could all be an individual's 1, 2, 3. Then prioritize them. Which of the 1, 2, 3 is most important? Then have each member of the family do the same thing. And then you can sit there and say to the family, what was your number 1? What was your number 2? What was your number 1? What was your number 1? What was your number 1? And then what was your 2? What was your 2? What was your 3? What was your 3? And where you start to see many people in the family say, well, my number 1 is relationships, my number 2 was trust, and my number 3 was love. Well, then you talk to another person, they say, well, my number 1 was love, my number 2 was personal expression or confidentiality, or so they mentioned something different, but they did mention love. And then the third member of the family happens to mention love also. You know now that love is a value of the family. So whatever decisions you make, you want to balance it on the fact of, does this disrupt our values? If it does, at least you know that it does, and to what degree. You're calculating that. But at least also you're including, what do we value most? Let's make sure our decisions don't counter that. And now, in the first step, we're going to identify exactly what's happened. And this is, by the way, in your book, okay? And it is for each of the episodes. Now, identify exactly what's happened, what happened, how did it happen, who did it happen to. Then the second step is analyze the situation, assess the problem, identify the problem, and in what areas did the problem create an impact. You're writing all of these down. The third step of that the third step in the decision-making model is, what is the number of one contributing factor? What is causing this issue to take place? You need to know that before you make a decision. The fourth step is, now that you know the number one factor, you need to go out and find out what information there is about this. Your primary source, you're going to go to the actual person or organization that's involved with this and ask them, what is this issue, and help us to understand it better. The secondary source would be, somebody's telling you this happened, or somebody suggests that you should do something a certain way, and it's coming from somebody else other than the primary source. It could be an article, a clinical paper. These are all secondary sources, and you gather them and you make them part of your primary, secondary information gathering. The third area that you look at is your gut. What does your gut, because that's often where our faith comes in, and other things that are very important when making decisions get included. So trust your gut is what we're saying in the decision-making process. The fifth step in making a good quality decision is where you're taking a criteria and saying, let's take what we're going to make a decision about and let's balance it on the criteria to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. And this will ensure safety of your loved one. You know, is safety a part of what's being considered? And do we have the resources that are needed to do the decision we're looking at? And then do we understand the timetable? Is it realistic? And do we understand the negative impacts? Because every decision has a positive and negative. Well, identify what the negative outcomes might be so that you can weight the factor of, is this a good decision? And then would you do this if, would you ask others to do this if they were doing it for you? Meaning it was done for you or to you. Is this still a good decision? These are all areas that you want to take a look at. The third coping skill is in the area of the family plan of action. And everybody could say, well, Roy, listen, we're just going to go out and do it. Well, it's going to get done a lot more effectively. I want to warn you that the addiction industry is not organized. And then again, either is the family. So you're taking two disorganized organizations and you're putting them together. So a plan is a very good idea. The other factor is you're going to more than likely require the assistance of a lot of different groups. And as time goes by, those groups are going to change. And now it's a whole new set of groups that you're dealing with. When you're at the hospital, the ER, that's what that is. Then you move over to detox, that's what that is. Then you move over to therapy and treatment, and that lasts for 16 weeks. That's what that is. Then you're looking at sober living, recovery, maybe incarceration, and then reentry. On all that's involved in that. So there's all sorts of reasons why a plan put on paper based on the decision and the information gathering that you've made based on the solution that you know you want to use are very good ideas. It all comes together with the plan of action. Then you take the plan of action and you go find a professional to help you. Everything that we've done up to now is to position you to a place where you can be properly assisted and directed and supported. This is what's often missing in the families. This is what exhausts the families. This is where the families get into fights internally on. So, for that reason, we're going to apply the 3D coping skills. Determine a solution. We're going to develop a decision, and we're going to design a plan of action. And we're going to do it each time. I hope this is helpful for you. I'm confident it will be.